So this is my bookshelf tour, and I think we'll start with the English ones. First one is Paradise Lost by John Milton in the Penguin Classics cloth-bound edition. It's very uncomfortable to hold because the glue is too strong, but I had to get it because it's a very, very beautiful edition. Next is Dylan Thomas. Some stories, poems and radio broadcasts from him. Then we'll move on to the 1950s. This is Allen Ginsberg. It's only some collection, only some poems, not everything, but you know, the essential. The Howl, and many more. Then we'll have American Classic, of course. Also a very beautiful edition. I got this in London. This is Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. Sorry, I have to do this with one hand, so it's not really easy to do. This is the newest poems collection I have. This is Book of Longing by Leonard Cohen, the singer. Very erotic and sensual poems, also with little drawings by him. They're nothing compared, of course, to Whitman or Ginsberg, but they're easy to read, and you know, I look inside from time to time. Then one of my absolute favorites, E. Cummings, also from I got this in London at Waterstones. Also just a collection, not everything, but E. Cummings is one of my favorites, one of my favorite poets. There is an Austrian poet who works a little bit like him, but we'll come to that later. Then also one of my favorites, and this time it's everything. Robert Frost, the collected poems by Vintage. I think when it comes to poems about nature, there is very little that compares to him. Oops! I have to use my foot to get this back together. Yeah, I really enjoy Robert Frost. Then we'll have Lord Byron. Again, selected poems. For some reason I just wanted an edition with this painting of him, because I like it so much. The orange font, the orange letters, and this dark black background of the painting. I think it suits it very well. Then poems by Bukowski on love, similar to Cohen maybe. This could as well be very short stories. Also with little drawings of him. These are not very good in my opinion, but I keep it just because Bukowski has a sort of special heart in my place in my heart. I'm sorry. Then we'll move on to the prose. You can get this in German, so I had to get it in English. Also, it's a very beautiful cover, as with most English books in my opinion. This is No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. This gets a lot of hype lately, I've heard. I haven't read it yet, but I'm very interested. We'll go to another complete edition. This is Complete Tales and Poems by Poe. This is a very thick book. This has everything from him, every tale, every poem, The Raven, The Telltale Heart, Gordon Pym. Yeah. If you're interested in English literature at all, some Poe should be in your library. Also a beautiful edition. I got this for my birthday. This is Dubliners by James Joyce. Also with this special cut of the pages. One of the best short story collections of all time. I felt guilty when it was gifted to me, because I didn't plan to read Joyce, so I just did it as my next project the very next day, and I think I read them all in one sitting. It was very special. Also, the annotations help very much if you are not that well versed in English. Then we'll have The Everyman's Library of Ulysses, also by Joyce. Also a very thick book, but it's rather largely it's with rather large letters, so it's a little bit of a cheat. And of course, apropos books you have to own when you're interested in the English language, Finnegan's Wake, The Unreadable Book, The Book of Language, The Book of Experimentation. Yeah, this is essential. Then we'll have another short story collection. This is Burning Chrome by William Gibson, the author of Neuromancer. This is in the same universe as Neuromancer. There is Johnny Mnemonic is in this collection, which was made into a movie with Keanu Reeves. I like his style very much, and it's also very well written, but it's very well written in comparison to other science fiction novels. It's not very well written in comparison with, Joyce or, Then Neuromancer itself, in English. I have it in German as well, but this is the English version. I didn't have to pay for this because I got this at a there's a special place in a cafe nearby where you can trade books or exchange books, and I found this there. Not very pretty, but I like the German version so much that I had to know what it's like to read it in English, so I got it. Then we'll have Waiting Until Spring Bandini by John Fante. This is yeah, very important author for Bukowski. He also writes in a similar style, but it's not really the same. It's more about immigration and Italo-Americans. This one is a coming-of-age story. There are also 2 more books. It's a trilogy with the same main character. This is the second one, Ask the Dust. This is the one I read first when I was in Germany on visit. I think this was the first novel that I read completely in English, and it wasn't very hard. It's a very comfortable style to read. He writes in short sentences, easy to read sentences. He has a sort of Hemingway-esque style to it. So yeah. And then another short story collection by John Fante, the same author, The Wine of Youth. This is from Echo. Then another Penguin edition, more controversial book. The Monk by Matthew Lewis. Haven't read it yet, but it's about a monk who experiences very, very sexual encounters in a monastery. Yeah, I don't really remember how I went about this book, how I got to it, why I know about it, but there was a phase in my life where I knew I had to get it, so I got it. I think this is also from London. This is Alice's Adventure in Wonderland with illustrations in color. It's both novels. It's also Through the Looking Glass. It has a pretty silver. It has silver pages. Then short story collections by Raymond Carver. When we talk about love and really please be quiet, please. Talking about Hemingway-esque books. This is the closest you can come to Hemingway-esque style without actually reading Hemingway. The next one is William S. Burroughs' debut novel, Junkie. And Burroughs' most famous novel, Naked Lunch. Also very experimental, of course, but yeah, when you have Ulysses, it starts to lack a little. But I think it's still very special, a very daunting book. Oh, I've almost forgot, maybe on purpose. I also have an edition of Atlas Shrugged. This is the biggest novel in English that I own. I just got it to know who my enemy was as a reader and a writer. It's not very well written. Its story is very lacking. The characters are laughable, but the cover is pretty. Oh yeah, I have Atlas Shrugged. Also, I had to know what all the fuss was about, so yeah. Where were we? With Burroughs. I also have a short story collection by Neil Gaiman. Haven't read it yet because I'm not that much of a fan of Neil Gaiman. But yeah. I heard from a colleague in my school when I was learning for becoming a bookseller that his short stories are very good, so I got it. The next one is actual Bukowski, Hermann Rye, his most serious novel, where he writes about his childhood, which, when you have read any of his novels or short stories, you know wasn't a very happy one. And yeah, this is the least amount of sex, but it's the best book of him, by him. Then we'll have The Hobbit by Tolkien. Okay. And The Lord of the Rings. Okay, now we move on to the German books and I translate the titles. We'll begin with poetry collections. This is Heinrich Heine, all of his poems. He's one of my favorite German poets. Very romantic, very excited and yeah. He just has a spark in his language that's very good, that's very inspiring. Then the god of the German language, Goethe. You can open this book at any page and the writing will be beautiful. There isn't really any, when you're talking about hit or miss, there isn't really any misses with Goethe poems. So yeah, this is not by far not every poem by him, but it's a collection, and I wanted to own one, so got it. Then something more unusual. This is poems by Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher. We'll come to Nietzsche when we go to the philosophy section of my bookshelves, but that's a long way to go, so yeah. His poems are very short, they're not very good, but if you like his poetry in Zarathustra, then you like this one. It has a very, very bitter and angry style and a very, he wants to do something and speak his mind and say what he has to say. Yeah, very different from Heine in a way, but yeah, also not that good. Then there is Baudelaire, The Flowers of Evil, of the most famous French poets of all time. Very beautiful, very dark, very unusual and eerie. It's a little bit like Lovecraft. You're in this world where you don't know what happens when you turn the corner. Yeah. Then Rimbaud. Every poem on the left side of the page is the French, the original, and on the right side is the German translation. Rimbaud, of course, also a major French poet. So major that I got 2 translations of all his poems. Then Celan. Some poems, not all of them, but as with Ginsberg, the most important ones. The Todesfuge, Mandorla. So then we'll come to Hölderlin. This is a new edition. There's this publisher in Germany and Austria called Reklam, and they do this yellow books that are very cheap, and now they just print normal paperbacks like this one, and I'm very grateful for that, because you can get the classics in a good, easy to hold and easy to read edition now, so I really appreciate that. Hölderlin has a very verbose, very not enthusiastic, but a really glamorous style. Yeah, also a very bit nationalistic song of the Germans. Hyperions Schicksalslied, Destiny's Song. Yeah, but Hölderlin is among the greatest German poets, so don't let that distract you. His style and how he orders his poems is very unique. Then Rilke. I get the impression that Rilke is very well read in the English world, in the English speaking world. So most of you who are speaking English and watching this video will probably know him. But I don't think you'll know the next one. This is Friederike Mayröcker. She's an Austrian, recently deceased poet. The poems are very unique, they are very modern, they are very experimental. They are short, sort of like short stories or diary entries. This one is designed like a diary entry. And yeah. When she died, I had to have at least one of her collections. So I got this one. Okay, no more poetry. We'll go to the prose now. I have a collection of all of Kafka. Let's see if I get one of them out. Let's pick the short prose. This is of course used. You can't get this anymore. And I didn't find it online either. I just found it, how do I explain? What's the English word for it? In a used book stand where you can buy on the street. Yeah, and then of course I have Reclam editions of Kafka, and this one is not so important. What is important are these two, because these have a different order of the chapters than these books. So the castle ends slightly different, or with a slightly different fragment than the castle in this collection. So yeah. Then we'll have Cervantes, Don Quixote, in 2 parts with a cover by Picasso. The first volume of In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust. Then all of Proust in 3 volumes. They are huge, they are not easy to read in the subway. I tried and I failed, so I got the first volume as a paperback. Then we'll move on to the Irish writers. Oscar Wilde. Aphorisms, are they called aphorisms in English? I think so. Little quirky quotes. Then The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Then the OG Ulysses in the only German translation that exists, made by a madman called Hans Wollschläger. Also one of the best translations into German, considered by many, of any book. Yeah. Then my Beckett, Murphy, Waiting for Godot, short stories. These include the texts about Nothing, The Exiled, First Love, Bing, Dante and the Lobster, things like that. Then this empty space is the 3 novels in a hardcover edition, but I also have the 3 novels in paperback. I'm almost through with the 3 novels, and I'm sort of like, in a sort of transcendental state of mind. But yeah, that's what happens when you read Beckett. And Mercier and Camille by Beckett. In Swim Two Birds by Flann O'Brien. I really couldn't get into this. This is also a very special German translation. There's a joke about this translator where one comes into a bookstore, wants to buy the English version, and another customer says, "Why don't you buy the translation? There's so much lost in the original." So yeah. Another O'Brien book, Irish biography, Postal Boy by Brendan Behan. This one is another biography of Behan. He tried to bomb a ship for the IRA, went into prison, and writes about his experiences in prison. Okay, the Murakamis. I need to get my table ready. Okay. What I talk about when I talk about running: Kafka at the Shore, Sputnik Sweetheart, Wind Up Bird Chronicle, First Person Singular, When the Wind Sings, and Pinball. I don't know what this is called in English. Writer by profession, something like that. Colorless Mr. Tasaki, Men Who Don't Have Women, Hardboiled Wonderland. Norwegian Wood, it's called No Smile in German, and Wild Jeep Chase. Then, okay, let's move the table out of the way. Kenzaburo Oe, the Wet Death, or the Death in Water, something like that. This is his latest novel. I really enjoyed it. It's very metafictional, it's very postmodern. It's a very special book. Then The Silent Cry, maybe, also by Kenzaburo Oe. In the short story collection. I don't think this has an official English title. I think this is just a selection that's specifically in German, available in German. Then Silence by Shushoku Endo. This is the book that got made into a movie by Scorsese, a Christian Japanese writer. One of the few Osamu Dazai books that you can get in German. It's called Old Friends. I really liked it. Didn't really get it, but I liked it. Then, okay, we'll have to be careful now. Let's move on top. This I just got recently, James Gordon Farrell, Troubles. It's about Ireland during the war in 1919. The protagonist is a British man who seeks shelter in a hotel. Then a Haikyuu selection by a Japanese writer and by Beat writers from the Beat generation. Another Murakami, the T-shirt book, and the South Korean writer. Okay, let's be more careful. Han Kang, the Vegetarian. Then Life to Sell by Mishima, and Confessions of a Mask by Mishima. I think this is called The Shopkeeper in English, Sayaka Murata. This is a very recent book. The Women in the Dunes by Kobo Abe, another classic from Japan. Now we move to the English writers. This is part English, part Irish, Tristram Shandy by Lawrence Stern. Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. Emma by Jane Austen. Persuasion by Jane Austen. Anthony Trollope, Septimus Harding. George Eliot. What is this called in the original? What is the original name of this? What is a Mühle? The mill on the floss. I'm so sorry. You know, when the camera's on, your vocabulary is cut in half, so, you know. Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Don't tilt. Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Lord Jim by Joseph Conrad. And Gormenghast by Mervyn Peake, the antagonist of Lord of the Rings, if you may say so. It's very beautifully written. And I think it's way more interesting than Lord of the Rings. It's not a play with German mythology, but with Chinese society and how it would transform if we put Chinese society in a sort of European landscape. Then I move these on top here. Joseph Conrad, The Rescue and The Damned of the Islands. I think they should be called so. Okay. We move on to my favorites, the Russians. Short stories by Pushkin. Evgeny Onegin by Pushkin. There are many translations of this book into German, but I decided this one because of the cover. I'm a whore like that. Gogol short stories. Dead Souls by Gogol, a new translation. There's a project now from a certain publisher that makes new translations of old classics that need a new translation because of the changes in the German language. Oblomov by Goncharov. Okay. So, Dostojewskij. What is this called? Records from a Dead House. This is the one where he goes into prison because of a pamphlet he wrote against the Tsar. And about the experiences in prison, which is a kind of staple in Russian literature, writing about your experiences in a prison. Records from I recently heard what this was called. The other record book, records from a cellar? No, from a hole? Something like that. I'll write it in the description. White Nights by Dostojewskij, a love story. Okay. The Player by Dostojewskij, a new translation. This was a very talented and very special person, this translator, Svetlana Gaya. She translated the 5 elephants, as she called them. And we'll get to the 5 elephants now. But first, I need to manage this bookshelf. Oh no, first we come to the top shelf here, to the top. This is The Doppelganger by Dostojewskij. Pure People, his debut. This is Tolstoy, Folk Tales, and Records of a Hunter by Turgenev. Also a very special translator, Peter Urban. He is most famous for his translations of Chekhov. Okay, now the 5 elephants. First one is Crime and Punishment. The second one is The Idiot. Okay. Third one is The Demons. She called it Bad Spirits. But there's also a translation that calls it The Demons. The Younglings, which she called A Green Boy, or A Green Lad, or A Green Son. Oops. And, of course, the Brothers Karamazov. Okay, I'm sweating a bit now, because this is such a long way to go. First Love by Turgenev. My Confessions by Tolstoy. Looking smug as always, Tolstoy. But he can afford to look smug. He's one of the most important writers of the 1800s. So, War and Peace by Tolstoy in 2 volumes. One of the best books ever written. Also one of the best books ever written is Anna Karenina. I need to reread this sometime. I have so many projects left, but I think maybe in the next year I will reread Anna Karenina. Hachi Murat by Tolstoy, one of his later works about a warrior from the Caucasus. Short stories by Leo Tolstoy. The Kreutzer Sonnets by Leo Tolstoy, and this is new. this this series